I don't have anything in particular that I've planned for this video. I thought I might just freestyle it, talk a little bit about some things that have been on my mind this week, share some of the things I have on my desk currently. One of these things is actually a journal. I know it's hard to see with this weird filter I have going on here that blocks out the rest of the room. But yeah, my dad actually brought this back for me when he went to visit my brother in Texas recently. So I've just been writing some prayers in here. I've also just been writing some thoughts about things. So I'm going to open this up. Cover. It's like these bear cubs sleeping. Okay. Carefully open these pages up. I've also done some drawings in here. And by no means am I an artist whatsoever. I love to write. I love being creative in other capacities, but God has not gifted me with a talent for art in this life, at least in the drawing or painting. But I've still tried to do some little doodles in here to get my thoughts across. So yeah, just have like, well, you can't see, can you? Some things like this. It must be so frustrating because you can't see in there, but yeah, most of these early pages are just prayers. Even have some Latin ones in here. One of the things I was writing about yesterday actually um, was do not mistake purity of heart for perfection. All of us stumble, and it's how we respond to our own fallibility that matters. True humility is not expressed solely through words, for there are wolves in sheep's clothing who tout fake self awareness and preach these virtues as if they are paragons of them. But in truth, the best evidence of humility is changed behavior, and good natured people are in a never ending commitment with self evolution. So, yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about what I wrote here. And those of you that follow me on Twitter know that purity of heart is something I've been talking about for quite a number of years now. Um, no, not everyone likes these types of sounds, but I love the crackling of the book. It's so satisfying. Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they hear purity of heart, they think that I'm talking about being a perfect person, being this paragon of all of these virtues and never once straying from their integrity. And what I've learned is that the people who have the purest hearts, they are the people that are most willing to examine themselves in full, brutal honesty. They're the people that can look inward and say, hey, what I did there, it wasn't great. I hurt someone with this behavior. I hurt myself with this behavior. This wasn't acting in alignment with who I want to be. And I think people that are pure of heart, they have a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. So I think we have to be careful sometimes with the labels that we self identify with. So, for example, a lot of people will say, I'm a good person, and they really hold on to that label. And they're like, I know I am a good person. And I'm sorry if you can hear my dog barking. It's very hard to get him to stop. Fortunately, he's very persistent. Um, I might have to cut this part out. We will see. But in case I do, I'll just say, you know, when we put certain labels on ourselves, like I am a good person, for example, when we are confronted with our own actions that maybe go against that label, for example, we did something bad, if we hold very tightly onto that label, instead of going inward and saying, okay, I'm going to examine this behavior, I'm going to change, I'm going to really make a plan to change and stick to it and be committed to it, we will instead put up these cognitive defenses. We will experience cognitive dissonance and we'll say, no, 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 that bad thing I did, that's not true because I'm a good person. I'm good. I'm good. And instead of actually, proving we are a good person, which doesn't mean being perfect, it means being someone who's willing to look at our own faults, we instead move more towards that diluted side of things where we will refuse to examine that behavior and instead find any justification possible for it. And that is a fixed mindset. That is not a growth mindset. People that are committed to integrity, they have a growth mindset because they know deep within themselves that they are going to stumble. They're going to make mistakes. They're not perfect. And it makes it that much easier when they do make a mistake to look inward and not catastrophize about it and not make it so that their entire identity needs to be hanging on the line because of that. So, I'll give you an example of something in my own life that's very small, but I think is a good example of this. So, back in my late teens, I think maybe early 20s, like 21, 22, maybe latest, I used to do something called Irish goodbying. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the concept of an Irish goodbye. And this is essentially when you kind of just disappear without a formal goodbye. Say you're on the phone with someone, you just kind of hang up. Or you're at a party, you don't say goodbye to the host or hostess, you just kind of skedaddle. And I wouldn't do this with everyone. I would really only do this with like my family and very close friends. And so in my mind, I was like, oh, it's okay if I do this. Like they know me well. They know that I Irish goodbye. They know I do this. But they were not happy with it. They were very frustrated with the fact that I would just be on FaceTime with them and then just be like, oh, bye. Um, and they would make like memes about it and jokes about it. And so in my head, I'm thinking like, oh, okay, like, this is just who I am, you know? Um, but yeah, they communicated to me that it wasn't something they liked, that it was something that was bothering them. And, it took me a while to actually fully integrate that and say, I'm going to change. I'm not going to do this behavior anymore. I'm not just going to laugh it off. I'm not just going to say, oh, haha, that's one of my quirks. They know this about me. They know that I do this because it's causing consequences for these people. It's something they've communicated to me in words that it's bothered them. And so, yeah, I haven't done it since. And if you'd asked the earlier version of myself, she would have come up with all these excuses for the behavior, like, oh, that's just what I do. I'm autistic or I'm time efficient. And, these excuses are not, they're not good excuses because had I been in a professional environment, you can bet that I would never, never have Irish goodbye uh, in that type of setting. So it's not a matter of just being autistic and not understanding things. That's very much an excuse that my younger mind would have made up. And so yeah, so that's just a very small example of how, you could still be a a good person, but you can have a growth mindset. You can look inward and say, okay, you know, what can I change? What is bothering other people in my life? What have other people in my life communicated to me? And how can I make an effort to change that rather than being fixed in your ways and being so fixed in those ways that you would rather rely on these justifications for the behavior. So yeah, I mean, it all seems so silly now, right? Like such a small thing, but yeah, that is it's so important to understand that communication from other people, it's not them trying to nag you or trying to change you. It's really them just expressing what they need from you to maintain a healthy connection. So if someone really wanted nothing to do with you, they wouldn't even bother communicating with you. Communicating is an act of love. It's someone saying, "Hey, I value you so much as a person that I'm telling you something you're doing and I'm telling you how it's affecting me. And I want to work together and coming up with a solution to maintain the sanctity of this connection we have together." And so I think a lot of people are very scared by communication. They see it almost as a threat. They're scared of conflict, but you really have to start looking at it as love. You have to start looking at communication as someone trying to actually improve what you've already built. You're trying to make it even better. It's an opportunity for growth. And I think, unfortunately, there are some people that are terrified of looking inward. They have gone years on decades on avoiding their inner self, and their entire life is shaped around avoidance of shame, around avoidance of bad feelings. And it's honestly, it's devastating for that person. It's hard to see, you know, and it not only hurts that person, but of course it hurts everyone else around them because in their avoidance and in their unwillingness to look inward, they are not going to be able to communicate well with other people. They're going to stonewall. They're going to completely avoid conversations. They're going to project, deflect, blame shift, do all kinds of things because they are so, so terrified of what they will find when they look inward. And they've built it up to be this massive thing in their head. And so they've built up all of these cognitive defenses, all of these walls. It's like a fortress around them. But the fortress isn't protecting them, it's keeping them trapped inside. And it's also blocking everyone else out and preventing them from forming healthy relationships. So I think, if that applies to you in even the smallest degree, things don't have to be like that. You can cultivate courage to look inward, and you can do it in small pieces. You can do it a little bit at a time, to work up more strength every day, to really look at yourself in the mirror. The ultimate form of courage is to face yourself in the mirror and not be scared at what's looking back at you. And if you are scared, to keep looking anyway, because that's bravery. Bravery isn't a lack of fear, it is being scared and being able to continue anyway. So that is why I often say that courage is the foundational virtue, because we need courage for self reflection. We need courage to uphold all of these other values. We need courage to communicate, to go into conflict with an appropriate mindset, to where we're really ready to listen to another person, because sometimes listening to another person means hearing that that other person hurt you. And that doesn't always feel great. You need to have the courage to say, okay, I know this isn't going to feel great, but I am brave enough to sit with that feeling and then do something about it. Yeah. So, and a growth mindset is something that any person can adopt if they truly want to. You're not stuck with a fixed mindset forever. Like I said, there are many times in my past that I had a fixed mindset with things. And there are probably still some things within my psyche at this very moment that I still have to dive into and discover that those things are very much fixed. But yeah, it's it's an opportunity that is available at any time and you can go at your own pace. So yeah, I'm trying to see what else I have on here. I actually have this little bundle of quotes. So we're going to open these up and we're going to pick a quote to focus on today. Okay. Oh, I opened up to this one. Okay, this is perfect. Hopefully that noise was not too distracting or disturbing. You carry all the ingredients to turn your existence into joy. Mix them, mix them. Perfect. I think that goes perfectly in line with everything I was just talking about. All the tools are there. Just need to work on strengthening them. A lot of people can go out onto a battlefield and they can hold up their guns and their swords and whatever weapons they have, and they can go and on a big stage and public speak, do a public speech in front of hundreds, thousands, millions of people. Um, but like I said, one of the most terrifying things in existence for many people is simply what it means to look at themselves honestly. It is really an epidemic of people that are terrified of their own soul. But there's so much freedom when you finally look in the mirror, even if the glass is completely shattered. There is so much freedom in that because you don't realize how heavy the weight is, the weight of delusion, of spiritual blindness. I mean, it becomes deeply pathological for people the longer and longer and longer they refuse to look at their own soul. And you cannot help but feel bad for individuals suffering from this. But you also can't do anything to force them to look inward. You can only be a mirror to them. And if they're not ready to do the work, you, as the mirror, will only create more agitation, and they will project that agitation onto you instead of seeing it for what it really is. So, yeah, and we'll see if we have any other quotes here. Spread love wherever you go. Oh, that's beautiful. It's a beautiful way to end off this little segment here. There is a beautiful balance between post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic growth. And what looks like rumination for one person, to me, is actually growth. It is me refining and reflecting and building a more integrated worldview from my experiences, having a better understanding of what it is I'm looking for. So, yeah, here's what I have here. Leadership is not an inborn right, it is earned. One cannot lead another genuinely unless they can first lead themselves through mastery over their lower impulses. True leaders are embodiments of humility. They do not see humility as lowering themselves, but as being raised up by their reverence to higher initiating forces. It can be a treacherous path to walk, with responsibility, with knowledge, with influence. The corruptive force of pride is so easily succumbed to, and this inverts all spiritual fruits. And no one is immune. Do not be fed by flattery. Armor yourself with quiet confidence that cultivates the courage to see oneself in brutal truth. Pray daily to never be given more than your integrity can handle. Build self-awareness. Commit unwaveringly to the virtue of verity. We all fall sometimes, and this is why we must have the strength to admit our faults rather than choosing the cowardly path of self-deception. Offer others grace so that when you need it most, you can offer that same grace to yourself without feeling like a hypocrite. Demonic energy typically doesn't appear honestly and brazenly. It appears like a seductive illusion, like the path of least resistance. But do not give in, be discerning. So yeah, I think that in the spiritual community especially, it's so easy to find people who have all the right words. And some of you may be thinking, Caitlin, what if that's you? You just read us these words from your notes here from your journal. You're tweeting all this stuff. How do we know that you are not this wolf in sheep's clothing? And to that, I say, hey, I'm actually glad that you would even, ask yourself that question because that's something that we need to be asking about every person that is posting content like this. They need to be held accountable. They need to be held to a certain standard. And so, if that is something that you were thinking, I'm glad of it. I really, really am. And I say the same things to my friends. I ask them to hold me accountable. I ask them to tell me when something I'm doing is not in alignment with my integrity. So, yeah, you know, it's one of those things where you just have to get to know the person. If you guys knew me in person, you would have to spend enough time with me to see that if my words really would bear fruit, that if I truly am the person that I claim to be, and to be quite honest with you, I don't know if there really is a person I claim to be. All I really claim to be is someone that strives for purity of heart, that strives for growth, that, you know, has a commitment to reverence and, yeah. And, pride really does come before the fall. And as my very wise friend always says, she prays and asks to never be given more than she can handle in that respect. Because, yeah, pride is such a corrosive force, and all of us are susceptible to it. And I think one of the best safeguards is just honesty with yourself. And like I mentioned, having the courage to be honest with yourself. So, yeah, I think I don't know if there's anything else I wanted to say here. Um, I think another big one is know thyself. Know your vulnerabilities, know your cognitive distortions, know your deeply held beliefs, your missing experiences. Make the unconscious within you conscious. And until you do this, you are going to be operating from a very dense bandwidth of awareness that will make you incapable of genuine growth or genuine reflection. And I think, the biggest threats to our integrity aren't other people. They're not the psychopaths of the world and the challenging people who actively try to break down these qualities in us. It's actually ourselves, because ultimately, self-deception is the biggest weapon of the enemy. The enemy is the deceiver. And if the enemy can get us to a place where we actually begin to deceive even ourselves, then we will fall. We really will. So that is why I talk so much about holding on to courage, to honesty, to being very real with yourself and understanding what happens when you feel something like shame. Looking at your immediate reaction to that is your immediate reaction to go, no, 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 I don't want to feel that. And then you come up with excuses and put these blinders on because you don't want to accept that something you did brought you shame? Or is it to say, okay, I'm going to sit with this shame. I'm going to really, really feel it. And I understand that doesn't feel great. I know that. But I know the way out isn't to just keep putting more and more layers over that shame to block it out from my vision. It's to actually fully uncover it and to go full force through it and grow out of it and from it and learn from it and actually see it as a beautiful lesson. So, yeah, I actually was not planning on going too deep into this. I was like, guys, I'm gonna make a relaxing ASMR. And instead, I'm like, guys, the deceiver, the enemy. But yes, this is just how my works. So, oh, so I hope all of you guys have a blessed, beautiful day or night, wherever it is that you are. I hope you know that it's never too late to start over. It's never too late to look inward. It's never too late for God's mercy. In fact, the people that have grown the most in life are the people that have usually needed God's mercy the most. And in knowing God's mercy, it makes them more readily able to offer that same mercy to everyone else around them because they intimately understand the ways in which they themselves needed